So it's really a film about redemption of Pete and of Joey. So that's how it came, and then once it became, once I got the outline, then it looked like it was going to fit into place pretty simply. Then it was, you know, several months writing the script, but once I got on the road, so to speak, then I got on the train and I kept running with it.
Thank you.
If I might say, I mean, and I think Don fully agrees that all that we're saying about Paul Bradley, he was really quite a brilliant man. He had an amazing talent. He had other difficulties, however, so he wasn't able to continue and really share with us all that he had. But one of the reasons all of us loved him so much, I think, is because he was so true. He was real. He was a very sensitive, and as I think, as Bets had said, he was a very, very sweet man, and we all miss him. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my dear. Hi, dear. It's Nola Bradley. Bradley's daughter.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my Lord. Oh, my God. These are all girls. Oh, my God. Thankful. I am Nola Bradley's daughter. I didn't have any idea how this movie... Give her the mic. Give her the mic. I didn't really expect that. Well, we've all held one of these before, haven't we, right? Anyways, I didn't expect the movie to be exactly the way I had planned when if I ever could, run into you, and you. But I have something for you, Doug, from my dad, and it's just ironic that it all turned out the same. But if you don't mind, Doug, I hope you don't mind, would you take this gift? That's Paul Bradley. Oh my God. He wanted to be in the ocean. Will you spread him? My mom from the movie. But I also have to really thank Mr. Donald Chabit for all that he did to get in touch with my sister and I for 3 weeks, and I just found out the other day, lightning, we got to get a hold of Donald Chabit, and you called the same day. We had no clue about any of this. Yeah. Spread him in the ocean or do whatever you want, but he loves the ocean. Thank you.
I'll tell a story about Paul. Richard Leiterman and I made a film about Paul about a year or two after this film came out, the original film, and it was a documentary for a CBC program called Telescope. It was called Born Hustler. And it was about Paul, and in the film there was a little scene with Paul and his 2 daughters at a playground, and they were 5 and 6 or 4 and 5, whatever. And Paul was not what you would call the best family man, but he was a great guy. And to give you the essence of Paul, there's a scene in that film where Paul had a gimmick where he would rent a limo for about 3 hours. And in 1970, the only people who rent limos was either the Prime Minister or Mick Jagger or somebody. I mean, now it's Joe the Butcher or anybody. So he would get dressed up in a suit and rent the limo for 3 hours, and he'd drive around the outskirts of Toronto on a work day about 7 in the morning. and he'd pull up to a bus stop where there was a pretty girl, roll down the window and say, "Hey darling, would you like a lift to work?" And of course she'd jump in this limo with some rich guy, he'd take her to work, get her phone number, then drive out to make another round, and after about 3 hours he'd have about 10 girls' phone numbers, and then a week later he'd show up on a date and with no limo, they go into TTC, and he'd say, the limo's in the garage. Well, it was a pretty brilliant idea of how to meet girls, but that was Paul. Hi, Paul.
Oh, there's one more question up there.
With the passage of time, have you come to understand the importance to Torontonians that you documented Yonge Street and Toronto at that time, and to Maritimers as well? That there are so many people in this parts that came from down there, and I never saw a bunch that missed home as much as they do. And Joey on Yonge Street, that was real. Yes.
Thank you. Well, I was born in Toronto, but my dad was born in Sydney, in Cape Breton, and my mother was a Newfoundlander. So, and they came here just before World War II, and when I was born. So, and then when I was at university, one of my cousins came up from Cape Breton, and he had not exactly experience like this, but he came up and tried to make a go of it here in Toronto, and he went back and didn't do so well. He went home. So I always remember that experience, and that was part of the thing that wanted me to make this film. And it's a standard story of the country mouse, city mouse, of someone could be some young man from Sicily going to Rome. I mean, it's a story that happens in every country in the world. So it's an iconic story in that sense. And this was, I guess, the first film where we ever really saw Toronto. I mean, 6 or 7 years before this, Don Owen made a film called Nobody Waved Goodbye, which is probably the first English language feature film. But you never really saw the city. It all took place in houses and apartments and schools. With this one, you really saw the city and saw practically the entire city. So that's just the way I make films anyways. I would have done it. Could have been in Budapest. It would have been the same experience, basically.
But it meant so much to us in Canadian cinema. I know for the longest time, because I've read your interviews, you said that wouldn't be the standard for Canadian cinema, but you know what? That is the Canadian story,
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is this going to a television release? I'm assuming that's what's happening, telefilm, and...
Well, it'll eventually go on television, I hope.
You're going to a theatrical release then?
Yeah.
Will there be more showings of...
Well, it's opening in Winnipeg and Calgary, and I'm not sure where else next week.
And open in Halifax and Vancouver.
It's been in Halifax and Vancouver and Sydney now.
And Sydney.
And eventually it'll come back to television and then go to a DVD release. And when it goes to a DVD release, it'll be the two of them together.
Yeah.
Well, I hope they're going to try and do that. They got to clear the rights and everything.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Please spread the word about Down the Road Again. It's currently playing in Halifax, Sydney, Vancouver, and of course Toronto.